Ladies, gentlemen, and adventurers of all ages, how would you like to become a servant of the storm, but in a sort of bloodthirsty way? Dual-wielding weapons, causing enemies to become wet and creating electrified puddles against them while also hitting them for loads of bonus damage from the existence of said puddles, and just generally becoming an absolute nuisance while filling the entire battlefield with electrified water, while also being immune to its main effect, and also resistant to just tons of different damage types, including your own. How about doing all of this while having both particularly strong melee options and also strong ranged options in the form of spells that combo with everything else we are doing, and doing it while being a really fun mix of fighter and wizard to create a very literal battle mage, and in a way that, while not being a top tier effective offensive build, is still extremely good, but more powerful for its extreme versatility, survivability, and also just the hellscape that you can create for your opponents through environmental effects. Like, you can genuinely start a fight by just creating a 10-meter pool of electrified water in the middle of all of your targets and just watch them panic. If that all sounds like fun to you, I present the Wavemother's Vengeance build. This mostly hinges on having two specific weapons, a feat that lets you use those weapons together, and then just a host of spells and gear to back up that combo. Starting off then, let's go through all of your levels from 1 to 12. I'll do them in my recommended order, but due to the required weapons, you can't really do this properly until Act 3 anyways. At level 1, we go for Fighter, taking two-handed fighting as our fighting style, as we will be dual wielding in this build. And then for your ability points, there are two different, very importantly distinct setups. To put it simply, part of what makes this build great are two items that each set one of your ability scores to specific numbers, so we have an ability score layout for before you have those items and for after you have them. Your basic layout then, your default one, will be 16 strength as our main damage stat, 14 dexterity, 12 constitution, 16 intelligence as our spellcasting modifier, 8 wisdom, and 8 charisma, as those are just less important stats for us. When you do get the two items, however, both your strength and your constitution will just be permanently set to 23, so we obviously no longer need those stats at that point. And so when you get them, you want to change your ability score layout to 8 strength, 16 dexterity, 8 constitution, 16 intelligence, 12 wisdom, and 14 charisma. This lets you have a bit of extra power as a conversational leader, which is always nice for your main character, but also gives you a healthy dexterity modifier, which helps out our survivability a fair bit of wisdom for your illithid checks, and just a nice healthy intelligence stat for a big spellcasting modifier. At level 2, you get action surge, which is of course very lovely, getting you an extra action once per short rest. At level 3, we unlock our subclass, and we're going to be going with Eldritch Knight here, which is a 1/3 spellcaster, letting us get access to spells and spell slots while still leveling up our fighter class in general. At this level, you get some cantrips and some spells. For your cantrips, you should get Shocking Grasp and Ray of Frost. Our biggest combo creator in this build is making enemies wet, and making enemies wet also makes them be vulnerable to both cold and lightning damage, so whenever presented with the choice, we are taking spells and cantrips that just deal either cold or lightning damage, and these are the two that we have access to here. For our first round of spells, you want Mage Armor, which is really big for this build, as we are going to be wearing clothing, no proper armor, so our AC is lower than you'd like to be in melee range, at least until you use this spell once per long rest. It just makes you a good deal tankier for the day, bringing us up to an average of 18 armor class in the full build. Then for our bonus spell, anything that you want here, personal choice of utility, as a lot of our spells will just be around for utility purposes, honestly. At level 4, you get another spell, and you also get to choose your first feat. For your spell, we're going to be taking Witch Bolt. It's a really handy little level 1 spell that does lightning damage, and is a pretty solid use of your concentration until you unlock 3rd level spells later on. For your first feat, we're going to be going with Dual Wielder, as it's just required to make this build work, as we're going to be dual wielding with a weapon that isn't classified as light. This is the only way that makes that happen, so we have to take it. Then we get Fighter level 5 for our extra attack, which is great, then Fighter level 6, which earned us another feat to choose, and here you have two choices really. Savage Attacker is really good in this build. In regular D&D, this only works with 1 die at a time, but in Baldur's Gate 3, it can work with every die you roll, so it's a really solid feat. The other choice is just ability score improvement and bumping your intelligence up to 18 for the extra +1 modifier. Basically, Savage Attacker makes your melee combat better, ability score improvement makes your spells better, so choose which way you'd rather lean just a little bit. From here, you have another choice, because the two end positions for this build are either level 7 fighter, level 5 wizard, or even split 6 and 6. The 6 and 6 split gets you a second 4th level spell slot, which is pretty swish, but level 7 Eldritch Knight gets you War Magic as a class feature. This makes it so when you use a cantrip, you unlock the ability to do a weapon attack with a bonus action that turn. This won't be your strongest combo, you won't be using it non-stop, but in longer stretches of combat where you're trying to conserve your spell slots, this can be incredibly useful. So the version that I'm showing here gets level 7 fighter, and for your spells, you want Chromatic Orb. It is the last damage spell that we can grab here that has the ability to do cold or lightning damage, as you can choose its damage damage type when you use it, and so we pick it up. Other than that, it's personal choice among the remaining utility here. From here forward, we go deep in on wizard levels the rest of the way. At level 1, you get some cantrip options, choose whatever you want, we already have the ideal ones, then you also get to pick some first level spells, and again, we already got the important damage ones for us from Eldritch Knight, so grab utility that you could have some use for here. At level 2, you pick your wizard subclass, and there are two choices I generally recommend for this. The first one is Divination. This gives you 2 dice roll after each long rest, and let you replace bad rolls with your pre-rolled dice for attack rolls or saving throws. 2 per long rest isn't that many, but the effect is pretty solid, and with only going to level 5 wizard, this is one of the better early grabs. The other option, and the one that I will be running here in the footage, is Conjuration. This lets you use Conjure Water once per short rest, nice big puddle that we can create for us to electrify, and it gives us another way to just make water once per short rest, which is always appreciated. At this level, you get a couple more spell choices too, and again, it's just utility personal choice right now. Then we get to level 3 on wizard and get to choose our first set of second level spells, with the only mandatory one here being Misty Step. This build creates hazardous floors, and it also has a heavy melee aspect to it. Having the ability to teleport freely around and make enemies go towards you is extremely strong given that combination. For your second choice, just go for another utility option, or something like Hold Person will always find some use eventually. At level 4 wizard, we get our final feat, and here we're going to go with Warcaster. This gives you advantage on concentration saving throws, which is exceedingly good as we have an important concentration spell and will also be up in melee range, so we'll be taking a lot of attacks. It also lets you do an attack of opportunity with Shocking Grasp instead of a melee weapon, which is just, really neat and fits thematically with the build too. As well, you get to pick a cantrip, whatever you want, then 2 more spells to choose here too. Again, these ones are just personal choice utility options. Then we reach our final level, which is level 5 for wizard, letting us learn 2 third level spells. The 2 that we're picking are pretty set in stone as being haste, which is the main reason that we took Warcaster, and then lightning bolt for just a massive big bang lightning damage spell to send through a puddle full of enemies. Past this, an important note is because of our combination of levels and classes, we actually do have a 4th level spell slot as a character, even though we didn't learn one while leveling. But because you are a wizard, you can learn spells from scrolls to fix that gap. On which note, there are 2 spells you want to be on the lookout for as scrolls so you can learn them for this build. Your 4th level spell is going to be Fire Shield, specifically because Fire Shield has a cold option that does cold damage to enemies when they hit you, and well, cold damage is doubled against wet targets, which is a major point of this build. So you can just activate this at the start of combat, it lasts for 10 turns, and let it rain hell as you wade in, and well, also rain hell, but leaning more towards the rain than the hell part. The other scroll that you want to find ideally is Counterspell, and it's just a really powerful ability to be able to cancel out the spell of your choice and choose whether to use it or not. With that, then we have all the levels and the spells. Your prepared spells will look something like this, ideally just all the cold and lightning damage spells that we grabbed, our important defensives, haste, Misty Step, and then your choice of utility options after that. As for the items, this is where it really comes together, so we'll talk about each item individually and then where you can get them for yourself. First, we have the Trident of the Waves weapon. This thing isn't crazy under normal circumstances, but its main unique feature that we use here is that it creates a puddle on an enemy on a hit, making them wet and setting up a small zone for us to electrify. This weapon is found in High Security Vault number 4 in the Counting House in Act 3, and you can easily just blockpick your way in there. This weapon is going to be specifically in our offhand, and then your main hand weapon is the Wavemother's Sickle. 1d4 slashing, 1d4 cold damage, which is an important part here, as again, cold is double damage against wet enemies, then it also gets advantage on attacks against wet enemies as a weapon too. The reason that we have our weapon set up the way that we do is so you can start your turn off with bonus action offhand attack to make an enemy wet at the start of your turn, and then any main hand attacks you do have advantage and also do bonus damage. This weapon comes from the leader of the Wavemother group in Act 3 if you choose to kill her. Then we have the Wavemother's robe for your armor slot, which is clothing. 10 AC plus 1 from enchantment, resistance to both fire and cold damage, which is lovely, and if you start your turn in a puddle of water, you heal for 1d4, which you should be doing pretty much every turn. As well, you get a free cast of Create or Destroy Water at 4th level once per short rest. Awkwardly, this item comes from doing the quest for the Wavemothers, so if you want to get both this and the sickle, you need to do the quest, then kill them afterwards.
Are we the baddies?
After that, we have the Water Sparkers. These are a pair of boots that quite simply electrify any water that you walk into or stand on during combat, thus enabling a bulk of our combos. Then we also gain 3 lightning charges when you start a turn on an electrified surface, which again, you'll pretty much be doing every turn. This is just a slight boost to accuracy and a tiny bit of bonus lightning damage on melee attacks. The boots are in a locked chest right beside Minthara in the Shattered Sanctum of Act 1. Then we have the Sparkswell Ring. This one is super important because it gives you immunity to being electrified unelectrocuted, which means that you can freely walk through your own puddles of lightning water without taking damage. And then it also gives you resistance to lightning damage too, because why not? To get this ring, you need to go to the Arcane Tower in the Underdark in Act 1, slip around the back to get the Sorcerer flower and activate the elevator, take it to the top and defeat Bernard, the construct that is at the top of this area. He will drop a ring called Guiding Light. You have to equip this ring and then a hidden button will show up on the elevator that takes you down into the basement of the tower, inside of which there is a chest with this ring in it. After that, we just have a pair of pretty important items found in the same place as each other, the Gauntlets of Hill Giant Strength, which will set your strength to 23 as long as you're wearing them, which is a big part of what lets us get all the stats that we have otherwise, and then the Amulet of Greater Health, which is your constitution to 23 as well, just making us a good deal tankier than we would ever honestly be without it. As for where to get these, they are in the Archives room of the House of Hope in Act 3, simply sitting on pedestals waiting to be picked up. And that's it for the required items. Use your other slots to flush it out a bit as you please, so let's talk about actually using this build then. After any long rest, you want to use Mage Armor. This sets your AC to 13, plus 1 from your armor, plus 3 from dex score, and plus 1 for dual wielding, and you set it a nice healthy 18 before combat. Then it could go anywhere up to 25 when you're actively fighting, if shield activates during a turn, which is extremely solid. Before combat, if you know what is about to happen, you want to give yourself Fire Shield in cold mode as it lasts for 10 turns, and then you want to use haste on yourself for an extra action per turn. Make sure that you create water as well, as making enemies wet will make them just a little anxious but not yet violent. Then you can open combat properly with a nicely lined up lightning bolt through the group of them. If you are thrust right into combat without any prep time, you want to haste as your opening action, followed by a bonus attack to create the puddle under the main enemy, and that's a really solid opening maneuver. Once you are set up though in combat with a pool of electrified water, you either want to just do melee attacks for advantage and bonus damage on the wet fools that are fighting you, or use your spell slots for big chunks of lightning and cold damage that do double what they would normally do. Your spells will generally do higher damage, but they are also a limited resource, which is why we have a beautiful melee combo on this build as well, so you don't have to put everything into your limited spell usage. That's basically it then. Use Misty Step as a repositioning tool, use Create Water as you feel is necessary, and just blast off, creating a beautiful steamy room of death as you electrocute water through massive waves of enemies. I hope you've enjoyed this then, and if you try this build out for yourself, I hope you enjoy using it too. It isn't the offensively strongest build that we've ever showed you, but it is very, very capable, and the survivability is surprisingly strong for a fighter not wearing actual armor, and it just sustains for ages. It has great AoE damage, great burst damage, great prolonged damage as well, and it has so many elemental resistances too, which is just awesome to have. And you get to wear this beautiful outfit that totally fits my big pink half-orc and his muscular ass thighs. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.